What was the dumbest way you almost died? I went to Avdiivka in eastern Ukraine with my brother. We wanted to make a film photos about the situation in Donetsk but basically had no planning training fixer. We got in a car with a random Russian dude who took us to the village. Soldiers everywhere, minefields everywhere, shelling at night. There were many points when I thought my heart stopped. I nearly crapped myself. Also got our passports temporarily confiscated by Ukrainian soldiers who rightly assumed we didn't know what the frick we were doing. This was back in 2018. 10/10 would not do that now. I was drying off after taking a shower. For some reason I was using a Christmas themed towel that had been around a few years and had some loose threads throughout. I was drying off my face and I guess I inhaled through my mouth and one of the threads wrapped itself around my uvula. I just gagged on it and was able to very slowly pull it out, but it took a few seconds and I was starting to get dizzy. When it came out I was left with a very sore throat and was gasping for air. It is humbling to know that I could have easily been found naked, wet, and dead with a towel in my mouth. I now take a deep breath and hold it before bringing a towel to my face. I also frequently purchase new towels. I had something similar happen when I suddenly inhaled a very long portion of my own hair. We have underground water storage tanks at the apartment block where I lived. Back when I was 8 or 9 I was playing with a football, soccer for all the Americans, that my friend brought. In the heat of kicking the ball hard enough to send it flying to the other block I stepped back farther than necessary. Now being a stupid kid I thought running as fast as I could kick the ball to great distance. And so I ran like the wind, and in running super fast when it was time to kick my feet tangled leading me to fall on the water tank, which was unlocked at that time. Water bowsers were called to fill them, that's why. I went in half my body hanging 20 feet above a dark space with what I was told 6 feet of water in it. The security guard came running to help me. Sometimes I think what if he was not around and was assisting someone, I wouldn't be here in bed sharing this with the world. Truly a hero in my eyes wherever he is now. T-boned a cop car on a bicycle riding through the French Quarter in New Orleans on a head full of LSD at 3 AM. To this day I'll never know how I walked away from that one with no repercussions other than a front bike tire bent 90 degrees. Because New Orleans, you weren't actively murdering someone so the cops couldn't give a crap. Stepping on an unsecured plank on a scaffold 10 stories up. When I stepped off of it, it teetered like a seesaw. I dang near wet myself grabbing it so it wouldn't tip over and fall. 10 feet 2 inches plank would have been my end in construction if it fell or my life. My boss was just pulling it into position and I misunderstood his instruction. Frick me, that was scary moment. I used to work on the 21st floor in a Manhattan building and there was a several month stretch where the facade of the building was under construction. The guys on the scaffolding near about gave me a heart attack just watching. Several times. I don't understand how y'all can do what you do. My mum, brother and his girlfriend were having a tense conversation in a seaside cafe. Me, being 11 and terrified of arguments, quickly drank my banana milkshake. Suffice to say it went down the wrong hole. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak and was properly choking. My brother had to slap my back repeatedly and perform the Heimlich. I remember gasping for breath thinking, am I really going to die from this? Really? Luckily, I didn't and I'm still here. Also, I still love banana milkshakes, so that's a plus. I'm imagining your brother the only one noticing, slapping your back and preforming the Heimlich while continuing the argument. Cut a cable while it was still plugged in. Entire arm was shaking. I've done this. Bright flash and a puckered butt, but all was well. I was using insulated tools so no shock, but still a nice jump scare. My bedroom was in a camper stored in a garage. It was freezing out so I turned on the propane heat. I was meditating and everything went black. The best way I can describe it is I was in a nothing place and there was no direction. No down or up or back or forth. For years I thought what I experienced was the results of mediation, but then I stumbled across a Reddit post where someone described almost dying of carbon monoxide poisoning from a propane heater, and they used that same nothingness description and I put 2 and 2 together. Imagine a yoga and meditation guru thinking he found the path to eternity or something but just got carbon monoxide poisoning when he meditated. I was about 8-9 years old and went to the beach. We had those long skinny cheap inflatable air rafts. I fell asleep laying on one and almost floated out into sea. I was awakened by some faint yells. I look up and I'm past the long pier where someone was screaming. If it wasn't for that one stranger that saw me, I'm guessing I would have eventually died considering I didn't know how to swim and my raft was deflating. I paddled back to shore and my parents didn't even know I was gone. Did a bag of H and overdosed BC. It was mostly fentanyl. The overdose itself was painless. Literally just went dark. However, getting revived with Narcan, although life-saving, puts you in instantaneous full-blown withdrawal. Also getting CPR on you hurts lol. Thank you Crozer Hospital for saving me. I can proudly say now that this was a different life ago. Congrats, good work and good luck. Jogging. Came across a downed tree branch and some electrical cables. Hopped over them casually and then was informed by the nice neighbor on their porch that I had jumped over some very live power lines that would have fried me quite well. Yep, commonly 7200V if it's your neighborhood typical power line. That's enough to make you explode. Even after they're turned off they can still kill you, because the miles upon miles of lines generate a massive amount of static from the wind. Got out of my truck to close the gate. Luckily heard the vehicle rolling back towards me because I failed to put the gear shift all the way into park and it popped into reverse. The door was open and it would have pinned me against the metal gate post. It still creeps me out 15 years later. Wow, 1.9k upvotes. Thanks. A dubious honor to have my stupidity acknowledged. I hope this raises awareness and also gets folks to slow down just a little bit. Makes me think of poor Anton Yelchin. He was such a good and promising young actor. Really affected me more than I expected when he died. Check out Charlie Bartlett if you haven't seen it. I had bad bronchitis once, and the codeine cough syrup wasn't giving me relief at the prescribed dosage, so I just started swigging from the bottle. After a while I realized I was breathing about 2-3x minute, and I called my boyfriend over. He was in the other room, and told him if my breathing got any shallower in the next 30 minutes he had my approval to call an ambulance. Thankfully it didn't come to that. I haven't taken codeine cough syrup since. I also have since quit smoking, which was causing the bronchitis in the first place. I quit on Sunday. Took apart a disposable camera while home alone, and got a bad shock. I was being dumb and taking it apart. After a bit I got to a plastic casing that had stuff in it, but was fully sealed. So, with all the wisdom of a 6th grader, I decided to hit it with a hammer till it opened. It opened just fine, and I checked out everything in it. Then I got to what was literally the only metal part. Of course I touched it. Now, imagine this. I am sitting cross-legged on the floor and touch the metal thing to go black for a moment. Next thing I know, I am still in the same seated position, but on my back, and kinda flopping a bit, arms stretched out to the sides. I felt like I couldn't get a full breath or fully exhale. It felt like the different sides of my heart were beating at a different pace from the other. My finger was blackened. It all lasted probably less than 1-2 minutes, but it felt like 20. Never got taken to the doctor for that one. Xenon flash unit. Yes, those things have a capacitor that can hold a nasty charge. I think they run at around 300 volts. The flash tube is fired by a coil that produces thousands of volts. Negligible current though. I got kicked down a flight of stairs by a sibling. I also grabbed a live light switch that didn't have the plastic cover on. I also almost stuck a knife into the toaster. Also, when walking home when it was dark, I was about to walk onto a busy main road and friend pulled me back. Half of these things happened when I was a kid. Life pro tip: if you need to use a knife to get your toast out of the toaster, unplug it from the socket first. Sometimes toasters like to get wedged in toasters and knives are usually waiting to spread butter etc. on it. So handy retrieval tool. So as long as you unplug the toaster, you'll be fine. I almost blew up the apartment while I was in it. One day in 6th grade I had left the gas stove on by accident. When I came home from school the whole apartment smelled like gas. I didn't know what gas smelled like then. So I come home and I go to my mother's stash for cigarettes so I can smoke one, and I notice that the windows are wet. They were drooling with liquefied gas. but I didn't make anything out of it, so I took the cigarette, and just when I was about to light it, this little voice in my head said don't do it, and I didn't. A few seconds later my mom comes home and I'm like, heck yeah, I got away with it. Thank God she didn't see me smoke. She flew into a hysterical episode over what was going on since she smelled it and knew what it was. I almost killed us both that day. You didn't almost blow up the apartment. You almost became the next OKC bomber. Swallowed a grape whole. Did the throw it up in the air thing and it got perfectly lodged and I immediately stopped breathing. Absolutely terrifying. After a hot minute of my life flashing before my eyes, I was able to calm myself and it moved down slightly so I could shallow breathe just over the top of it. But every time I tried to swallow it would move and I'd stop breathing again. I was rushed to the ER and had emergency surgery to have it removed. Got asked about 3 times why I didn't just chew it. Because I'm a dumb butt. And no, I wasn't 8 years old at the time. I was about 22. I have a feeling that something like that will happen to me one day. I stuck my head out of the Ferris wheel when it stopped moving. The wind was swinging the carts and my head got pinned between the cart and the frame of the Ferris wheel for a few seconds, until the cart swung the opposite direction. Had it been moving I could have lost my head in front of my friends. Almost got decapitated by a cable wire when I wrecked my 4-wheeler. I was thrown over the handlebars and went right in between the wooden pole and the cable. If I'd been just a few inches over, things would have ended very badly for me. Second time I've ever been so close to death. One of my best friends died that way. He was decapitated. Horrible way to go. I was driving along a rural highway at around 100 km/h in Manitoba, Canada. Blew a stop sign that I didn't notice. I was just so zoned out from driving in a straight line for so long, and didn't realize I was intersecting a major highway until I looked to my left and saw the grill of a semi-truck taking up the entire window. No idea how or why he didn't T-bone me and kill me instantly. It felt very close, like 0.5 seconds later and I was dead. Licked the output terminals of a transformer coil. Took more than a kilovolt across my tongue. Had a headache for 3 days. I was home alone as a grown man a few years back and sat down to eat a Cadbury's creme egg in the middle of the day. I was too excited, too eager. I bit a decent hole in the top of the egg, and in one giant breath I sucked all of the insides into my mouth. Intentionally, but for some reason I swallowed the whole glob of goo in one go, and it just sat there and chilled in the middle of my throat. Couldn't breathe. Panicked. I was hemorrhaging myself. I was running stomach first into the arms of the sofa. I was losing consciousness and thinking about how my stupid death by creme egg will make the front page of the dumbest tabloid tomorrow. Eventually my breath pierced a very small hole through the goo, which gave me very little oxygen but enough to keep me alive. And I had to wait a full 5 further minutes until I had full breathing capacity while the glob inched its way down my throat. Wife and baby came back from shopping soon after. I tried to articulate what had just happened and how close I was to dying, but as soon as the words Cadbury's creme egg left my mouth I struggled to get her to understand the seriousness. I was maybe 14 years of age then. It was cold and I decided to heat the water up to take a bath. We didn't have geysers then. We used an electrical immersion rod which is immersed in the water. I was running late for school and wanted to take a bath immediately, so I didn't mind if it was just lukewarm too. Instead of turning it off and using a mug, I just picked up a steel bowl and dipped it into the water. While IT was turned on, I swear I was Michael Jacksoning my butt off with current jolting in my body. Fortunately my sis walked in right then and turned it off immediately. I escaped unscathed. I have no idea how, but that was one dumb way to go out. When I was little, my dad and I were eating Hawaiian rolls. He was drunk, and I was bored. So I tried to fit the entire roll into my mouth by crumbling it up into a ball, and then I decided to try and swallow without chewing. 15 minutes and a now sober dad later, I was breathing enough to be rushed to the hospital. IDK, what are Hawaiian rolls? But rolling things into a ball and swallowing them is really asking for choking. LOL. When I was 16 I wanted to get drunk for the first time. I wasn't aware of how long it should take and how much alcohol was needed to get drunk, so I just kept taking shots out of every bottle in my uncle's pantry. Low-key alcoholic. Had like 20 different bottles. I drank half a $300 bottle of Crown Royal. He had variety too, so I took like 2-3 shots out of most of them. Whiskey, vodka, rum, tequila, wine. Dude, I was fricked. Woke up in a hospital bed. Evidently I had blacked out and was laying on my back vomiting. For some reason around that time at night my younger sister walks downstairs for water and sees me choking on my vomit. If she never went downstairs that night I would be dead. Edit. I should probably add the doc told me I almost died from alcohol poisoning. They had to flush the alcohol out of my system. My dad thought the best way to teach me to swim would be to just throw me into a local swimming hole. I remember hearing laughter, then waking up surrounded by a bunch of people with terror in their eyes. I hope those people knocked your dad around a bit. That sucks. 9mm hollow point. I had a gun to my head and was prepared to evacuate my brain pan. My dog chose that moment to rest her chin on my shoulder. Well, here I am. Good dog. A friend of a friend once put a Glock in his mouth and pulled the trigger. It jammed. A moment later, my friend called him, saying this is probably really weird but he just had a feeling something was up, and he was just checking in. His friend fully burst into tears, like crying hysterically. He lived after that. I was driving over the Narrows Bridge eating sweet tarts and I swallowed some juice from sucking them wrong. I couldn't breathe. Kept trying to take giant gulps of air but it didn't seem like I was getting any. I was thinking, crap, I'm going to die and drive right off this freaking bridge. Fortunately I calmed myself down and managed to clear my throat. Scared the crap out of me and I've never eaten sweet tarts again. Walking down the street, zoning out to some Iron Maiden or AC/DC CD in my Discman. Thinking about the sweet butt time I'm going to have with the Sega Genesis or SNES game I just rented. I didn't even notice the red light looming in front of me, and I just moseyed my way into a busy road with traffic barreling down on me. Thankfully, the driver was paying more attention than I was, and he stopped short of hitting me by a foot or so. Then he got rear-ended by a pickup that couldn't fully stop in time. I'm not sure what happened after that because I frickin' booked it. I still feel guilty about that to this day, running away like a chump. You were shook, bruh. I bet most of us would have ran. I was riding my motorcycle to work and had a person cut me off in the last few feet of a split in the highway, and they slammed on the brakes at the same time. A standard swoop and squat maneuver, except their car had zero functional brake lights, and I couldn't react fast enough. I was already slowing to open the gap back up, but failed to process why the trunk of the car lifted up 6 inches suddenly. One chopper ride, a lot of morphine, and 20 feet of intestine later, I lived, only to be placed 51% at fault on the accident report. It seems that no matter on a bike you catch 51%. I got hit from the side from a vehicle, multiple witnesses, and still caught 51%. When I was in elementary school I was the youngest kid at the bus stop, and the only girl. There were usually anywhere between 5 to 10 boys ages 7 to 16. The older kids would goad the younger ones into doing stupid things. This particular morning the big kids talked we younger kids into a race across the street and back. I was sure I could kick everyone's butt. I'd spent the last 3 years dodging my brother's bullying. I had this. I was Joe Frazier hopping from one foot to the other, pepping myself up. We walked up to the curb, I was ready. I bowed my head, clenched my eyes shut, and one kid started to count down from 10. In my concentration I didn't realize he'd stopped the countdown at 5, and I didn't hear him shout pause. I kept hearing the numbers in my head. At 1 I took off like a bullet, arms pumping, feet pounding pavement. Next thing I know I'm airborne, and for a split second I thought I was floating, until reality and me came crashing down into a ditch. I was lucky because the car saw me and was slamming on their brakes, so it was only going like 10 miles per hour. No permanent injury. I just had a few bruises. Could have been a lot worse. Tried to go up to Angel's Landing and Zion National Park, but the trail got impassably icy like 3/4 of the up. The first time I dragged myself up the rock wall, fell on my butt, slid 20 feet, and stopped right at a sheer 50-foot drop. Was dumb but understandable. When I did the exact thing for the exact same consequence right afterwards, that was the dumbest way. I almost died. Fool me once. At an early age, One of my first retainable memories actually. I was with my parents and a group from their church on some kind of retreat. We went down to this nice swimming spot. Water was so clear it made the illusion it wasn't as deep as it was. My jealous kid brain thought it was some balls everyone got to get in but me. Didn't even know how to swim. So when my parents weren't looking I saw a spot and thought I'd get in for a quick dip. Closest I've ever been to death. Luckily a church member saved my life. Also, when I was in 4th grade I tried swimming across a river because my friend did it and coaxed me into it. Almost drowned. Funny thing is his dad was a lifeguard and was watching close by, but did nothing. Then at the age of probably 13, I stuck a paper clip into an extension cord connecting to a large fan. Luckily didn't get shocked at all, just a big spark from it. My dad was sitting probably 7 or 8 feet from me. I can still remember his look of utter disbelief. I was one stupid mofo. I am not a good swimmer. In Egypt there is a place where the sea is flat and shallow and abruptly drops into the famous blue hole. I went over the edge, perfectly sober, no one knew, flailed my way back. Had fallen on my head. Then in the pool I was thrown off the raft and hit my head on the pool so it split my head open. Also I don't know what I did but for 3 months I couldn't really get anywhere. My head hurt so much that if I tried making a walk I would just collapse. Couldn't do anything. No reading, no watching TV, just music for 3 months. Doctors didn't know what was happening and eventually it just stopped in a couple weeks. I had IHOP for lunch and got a mint on my way out. I popped it in my mouth as I got in my car and it lodged in my throat. I tried to clear my throat. It didn't move. I tried to cough. It didn't move. I couldn't move any air in or out. It dawned on me that I was in real trouble and there was nobody else in the parking lot to help. I was going to die from a dinner mint in the parking lot of IHOP. I was both panicked and embarrassed. This is exactly how normal people die. My eyesight was swimming as my vision went dark. I was starting to slump and then mint slipped forward. I went into a coughing fit. My eyes were burning. My throat and lungs were burning. My mouth filled with saliva as I sucked in huge gasps of air. I took a few minutes to get composed and then drove to work. Nobody knows. Jumped into a swimming pool when I was like 4 without any experience or armbands. Luckily this guy jumped in after me and was able to get me back to the surface. My impatience got the better of my 4-year-old self. I was waiting to take a left turn at a stoplight. I had green but not an arrow so I could have waited in the middle of the intersection for it to be clear. For some reason I did not pull out yet. The next thing I know, I hear tires screeching and then see a concrete truck to my left sliding through the intersection exactly where I would have been waiting. He luckily didn't hit anyone but missed his red light and was probably going 40 miles per hour where I would have been sitting. My face would have been buried so deep in the bumper I get chills thinking about it still, 25 years ago. Cards Against Humanity bought an island in Maine they renamed Hawaii to. They gave everyone who bought their holiday bullshit package a square foot of the island and the deed included a treasure map. 2 friends and I left work in the middle of the day in Boston, drove north, bought a canoe and a random tomahawk, and tried to get to the island. The problem was the lake was half frozen. No freeze or solid ice would have both been great, but the thin sheet of ice wasn't walkable and required a lot of effort to break though with a boat. My friend laid at the bow using the tomahawk to break the ice while I paddled. It worked until we got to slightly more solid ice near the island. The ice breaking turned into using the axe to pull the boat up onto the ice and we would shimmy the boat down to crush through the ice. At one point, we zigged when we should have zagged and freezing water dumped into the boat. We got scared and tried to turn around, but we were literally frozen into a path of cold death of our own creation. We got out after a 35-point turn, loaded up the boat and watched as a group that was our mirror image carrying a canoe from the tip of a peninsula across a frozen shallow spot onto the island. We came back a week later and opened the safe. It was filled with 250 cake cards with the picture of a sloth on them. TLDR. Almost died trying to cross a half-frozen lake to get some Cards Against Humanity cards. Frick it, here's going to be a whole list of dumbassery when I was younger. Bread was stuck in the toaster. Tried to pull it out with a metal fork until I realized what I was about to do. I was at a gas station about to light up a cigarette until I realized how stupid that is. Choking on food. Almost drowning. slipping in the shower and smacking my head on the floor, almost shooting myself in the head with a .22. I was picking up the rifle when I accidentally pulled the trigger with my thumb and the bullet went through the brim of my cap and into the roof. Driving ATVs and motorbikes without a helmet on bumpy dirt roads. Almost got bit in the ankle by a poisonous snake while walking on a path in a forest. I was wearing Crocs. I wonder how the Grim Reaper gave me a pass on all of those occasions. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.